You've been taught that your anger is ugly, dangerous, unbecoming, something to be managed, controlled, swallowed, like bitter medicine that makes you sick to hold down. But what if your rage isn't the poison? What if it's the antidote? Watch a child's face when they first experience injustice. That flash of disbelief, the furrowing brow, the sudden tears. It's pure, a compass pointing directly at what's wrong. Yet somewhere along the way, we taught them to doubt this knowing, to blunt their edges, to mistake compliance for goodness. If you keep silencing the voice of your righteous rage, you'll die like those who came before you, slowly hollowed from the inside, filled with the quiet cancer of resentment, mistaken for peace. The body keeps the score. The unspoken fury calcifies into chronic pain, autoimmune disorders, the endless fatigue no doctor can diagnose. You've been taught to betray your anger and call it maturity. Look at your hands, how they shake sometimes for no reason. Look at your jaw, how it aches in the morning from grinding truths you refuse to speak. Your body is screaming what your voice has been trained not to say. The most dangerous emotion isn't rage, it's rage denied, rage misdirected, rage turned inward until it becomes depression, anxiety, addiction, the acceptable suffering we've normalized, instead of allowing the sacred fire that could burn down what needs to end. Your silence isn't peace, it's self-betrayal. Remember when you first learned to choke it down? Perhaps it was watching your father swallow his dignity at work, coming home silent and small, or when you raised your voice in justified defense only to be called too sensitive, or when you saw real injustice and were told, that's just how the world works. You learned the language of self-betrayal. It's fine. Don't worry about it. I'm not mad. You accommodated. You rationalized. You forgave what should never be forgiven. Nothing changed. Take a breath. Feel the weight of all you've carried. Every time you smile when you want to scream, the authentic you retreats further into shadow. Every time you say, it doesn't matter, when it matters deeply, something essential dies. Every day you wait to speak your truth, your power atrophies like unused muscle. You didn't heal, you adapted. Look at what this silence has cost you. Relationships built on the foundation of your self-erasure. Opportunities lost because you wouldn't fight for what you deserved. The creeping sense that your life is happening to you, not through you. You've become so good at emotional regulation that you've regulated your soul into submission. You've mastered the art of explaining away your own mistreatment. They didn't mean it. It could be worse. I should be grateful. When was the last time you felt the cleansing fire of justified anger move through you without apology? When did you last trust that your rage wasn't a character flaw, but a response to something profoundly wrong? That knot in your throat isn't anxiety. It's truth fighting to be born. The ancient Greeks recognized what we've forgotten. They had a goddess for this. Lyssa, divine rage personified. Not mindless destruction, but sacred fury with purpose. The righteous anger that cleared the way for justice. The Greeks understood that rage wasn't a defect of character, but a necessary response to violation, without which no boundaries could stand. In indigenous cultures across the world, anger isn't pathologized, but channeled. The warrior energy isn't something to be medicated away, but directed toward protection of what matters. The Maori haka isn't performed to intimidate, but to honor the life force so powerful it cannot be contained in politeness. It's not about destroying, it's about protecting what matters. James Baldwin wasn't offering abstract philosophy when he wrote, "To be a Negro in this country, and to be relatively conscious, is to be in a rage almost all the time." He wasn't advocating mindless violence. He was describing the appropriate response to constant injustice. His rage wasn't the problem. The conditions that made it necessary were. We've been taught to fear anger's power, rather than its absence. We admire the non-violent resistance of Gandhi and King, but conveniently forget that their peaceful methods were fueled by a backbone of righteous indignation that never compromised on the demand for justice. What's rarely mentioned is that before these leaders became symbols of peace, they were first branded as troublemakers, disturbers of the order, inconvenient voices that wouldn't be silenced by appeals to civility and patience. Swallowing rage doesn't make you fireproof. It burns you from the inside. Your anger isn't modern dysfunction. It's an ancient warning system telling you that your boundaries are being violated, your truth is being denied, your needs are being sacrificed. And the greatest victory of those who benefit from your silence is convincing you that your rage is the problem, not the conditions that sparked it. We fear what lies on the other side of our expressed anger, the relationships that might end, the comfort we might lose, the identity of good person that might be sacrificed. But what awaits us isn't destruction. It's clarity. It's the exquisite relief of alignment between what we feel and what we express. But there's more to understand about how this sacred fire has been systematically extinguished within you. Your anger wasn't born toxic. It was made that way. We must distinguish between the twisted, corrupted forms of rage, the kind that perpetuates cycles of harm, and the clean, clarifying anger that points unerringly toward what must change. Three forces have conspired to disconnect you from the power of your righteous anger. The silencer. Your anger makes everyone uncomfortable. Control yourself. The gaslighter. You're overreacting. It wasn't that bad. The tone police. I might listen if you said it more calmly. These aren't just external voices. You've internalized them. You've become your own silencer, your own gaslighter, your own tone police. You interrupt your anger before it can even fully form, cutting it off at the root with doubt. Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I should just let it go. You're not exhausted because life is hard. You're exhausted because you're fighting yourself. You're not overreacting. You're finally reacting to what you should have opposed long ago. Stop and feel that truth. Let it sink into your bones. Consider this. What if your anger isn't the destructive force you fear, but the evolutionary adaptation designed to protect what matters? What if, like physical pain, it exists not to hurt you, but to direct your attention to what requires healing? The body's wisdom predates our modern discomfort with emotion. The surge of energy, the heightened awareness, the sudden clarity that comes with righteous anger. These aren't accidents. They're features of a system designed to mobilize you in the face of injustice. When you suppress this response, the energy doesn't disappear. It turns inward. It becomes the constant vigilance of anxiety, the heaviness of depression, the numbing escape of addiction, the endless scroll of distraction, the chronic illnesses no one can explain. Your unprocessed anger is speaking through your body when your voice won't say the words. Maria, a client of mine, spent decades building her career in a male-dominated field. She prided herself on not being like other women, not complaining, not making waves, laughing off inappropriate comments, working twice as hard for half the recognition. She came to me with debilitating migraines that would leave her bedridden for days. When we began unpacking the decades of slights, undermining, and outright discrimination she'd normalized, the rage that emerged was oceanic. She feared it would destroy everything she'd built. Instead, it became her compass. She began speaking truths she'd swallowed for years. Some relationships ended. New ones formed. Her headaches didn't disappear overnight, but they became messengers she learned to listen to rather than enemies to be fought. Take another breath. Think about the pain you carry that might actually be anger in disguise. Look at the people you admire most in history. Were they people who never got angry, or people whose anger fueled them toward creating necessary change? Martin Luther King Jr. wrote from Birmingham jail about the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice. His words weren't gentle. They were precise in their righteous indignation. Drop a fire emoji if this resonates. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone your comfort. You don't owe anyone the convenient lie that everything is fine when it isn't. The question isn't whether your anger is justified. The question is, what is it trying to tell you? What boundary needs to be drawn? What truth needs to be spoken? What action needs to be taken? Your anger isn't the problem. It's the solution you've been taught to fear. Look at who you've become. Careful, appeasing, swallowing flames only to burn from within. You became the peacekeeper, so others wouldn't have to face the discomfort of their own actions. You became the mediator, always understanding everyone else's perspective while abandoning your own. You became so reasonable that you lost the ability to recognize when reason itself becomes a trap, when fairness means giving equal weight to both the boot and the neck. You were so fair, you let people hurt you. If you keep diluting your rage, you will never access its transformative power. You will never draw the boundaries that protect what's sacred. You will reach the end of your life having fought for everyone, except yourself. The world doesn't need more nice people. It needs more awake people. More people whose anger is aligned with their deepest values, rather than misdirected at safe targets. More people who understand that true peace isn't the absence of tension, but the presence of justice. When you deny your righteous anger, you don't just harm yourself. You abandon those who need your fire, the ones coming after you, who will face the same violations you normalized, the ones whose voices are even more silenced than yours. Your swallowed rage becomes complicity with the very systems you know are wrong. What if the discomfort you feel around your anger isn't a sign to suppress it, but to purify it, to separate the clean, clarifying anger that points toward necessary change from the toxic forms of rage that perpetuate harm? You weren't born afraid of your own power. You were taught that your anger made you unlovable, unreasonable, unmarketable. You were taught that accommodation was the price of belonging. But what if true belonging only comes when we bring our whole selves, including our sacred rage, to the table? What if the relationships worth keeping are precisely the ones that can withstand the heat of your honest fire? Your anger isn't a character flaw. It's a neglected power source. It's the exact energy needed to break through comfort zones and create change. Without it, your compassion becomes enablement. Your understanding becomes excuse-making. Your patience becomes procrastination on what must be addressed now. The turning point comes when you realize your anger deserves the same respect as your joy, your grief, your love. It carries wisdom if you'll listen. It carries energy if you'll channel it. It carries truth if you'll speak it. Today, something shifts, not because the world has changed, but because you have. Because you're ready to reclaim the fire you were born with before you were taught to extinguish it. It begins with permission. Permission to feel the full intensity of your emotions without judgment. Permission to be messy, imperfect, human in your expression. Permission to trust that your anger, when acknowledged and directed with intention, becomes not destruction, but creation. You weren't born a doormat. You were taught that boundaries are selfishness. The journey of reclaiming your righteous anger isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before you learned to fear your own power, before you made yourself small to accommodate others' comfort, before you mistook peace for the absence of conflict rather than the presence of truth. This reclamation happens in stages. First, you feel it fully in your body, no longer numbing, distracting, or rationalizing it away. Then, you get curious about its message. What boundary has been crossed? What value has been violated? What action is being called for? Finally, you channel it, not as reckless destruction, but as focused creation, as the energy needed to say no to what diminishes and yes to what affirms life, as the strength required to stand in uncomfortable truths rather than comfortable lies. Your anger, when honored rather than feared, becomes the fierce guardian of your most cherished values. It becomes the fire that burns away what no longer serves so new growth can emerge. In the comments below, complete this sentence. I reclaim my rage. Let this be the sacred declaration of what you'll no longer tolerate, what you'll no longer pretend is okay when it isn't, what you'll no longer sacrifice for the comfort of systems and people that were never worthy of such sacrifice. This isn't the end of your journey with righteous anger. It's your first conscious step toward using it as the transformative force it was meant to be. Subscribe now if you're ready to stop treating your anger as the enemy and start wielding it as the ally it was always meant to be. Remember, a world that profits from your silence will never teach you how to speak. That's why we need each other. That's why this community of truth-tellers and boundary defenders matters. That's why your voice, your fire, your refusal to shrink, it all matters more than you know. There will come a day when you look back on this moment as the turning point, when you finally understood that your rage wasn't your darkness, but your light. When you stopped apologizing for the space your truth requires and started recognizing how much healing becomes possible when we stop pretending. One day, they'll ask how you found the courage to speak when silence was so much safer, and you'll smile, because courage had nothing to do with it. It was survival. It was integrity. It was finally understanding that swallowing fire doesn't make you fireproof. It burns you from within. Your righteous anger isn't separate from your love. It's a manifestation of it. What else but love would make you fight for better? What else but love would make injustice so unbearable? What else but love would give you the strength to risk comfort for truth? The world is waiting for your fire, not because it will be comfortable. It won't be. Not because it will be perfect. It can't be. But because it will be real. And in a world drowning in pleasantries that mask oppression, in politeness that preserves power, in civility that silences truth, your sacred rage might be the most honest prayer you can offer. The permission you give yourself to feel and channel your righteous anger becomes permission for others to do the same. Your fire lights the way. Your silence was never peace. It was self-erasure. It's not anger that's dangerous. It's the world that made you ashamed to feel it.